She worked through every weekend, but had no idea what was coming next. For 4 relentless months, Claire lived in a cycle of coffee, deadlines, and high-stakes deliverables. While others wrapped up their weeks with happy hour or family dinners, she was still at her desk, 7 p.m. on Fridays, 6 a.m. on Sundays, chasing perfection on a project that had the potential to redefine her career. This wasn't just another account. It was the account, one of the biggest clients the firm had ever landed. A national rollout of services, multi-million-dollar contracts, and enough visibility to put any senior partner on the radar of industry leaders. Claire wasn't a partner, though. Not yet. She was a strategist, sharp, efficient, quietly brilliant. And she knew if she nailed this, everything could change. Her days blurred together. Takeout containers stacked up on her desk. Her social calendar disappeared. Even her dog walker started texting, "Just checking if everything's okay," by week 6. But Claire didn't complain. She believed in the grind. She believed that hard work, real nose-to-the-grindstone dedication, would eventually pay off. When the day finally came to present the final deliverable, she arrived at the client's high-rise conference room 30 minutes early. Her PowerPoint pristine, numbers triple-checked, and proposal printed on 120-pound linen paper. The result? A flawless pitch. The client was thrilled. By the end of the meeting, the contract was signed. That evening, she returned to the office with a rare smile on her face. It was done, but nothing could have prepared her for the email that landed in her inbox just after 8 p.m. that night. Subject: "Thank you. Enjoy the game, Claire. You went above and beyond. As a personal thank you, please enjoy these 2 tickets to the Super Bowl. Seats, 40-yard line, front row." David Langston. Her breath caught. The Super Bowl, front row. As a lifelong football fan, this wasn't just a reward. It was a dream. Her father had raised her on Sunday night football and hot wings. She had memories of snowy tailgates, fantasy leagues, and yelling at the TV like it could hear her. And now, this was more than just appreciation. It was personal. She reread the email 3 times to make sure she wasn't imagining it. She even printed it out just in case. She knew the client had sent the tickets to her boss, Jason Whitmore, who typically handled logistics for corporate gifts. That was fine. Jason could be smug and territorial, but surely this would be straightforward. The email clearly named her. She imagined it. Jason walking in the next morning, offering a rare nod of approval, and handing her the tickets with a well-deserved. Maybe a few coworkers clapping. Maybe, for once, she'd be seen. Instead, Jason avoided her office entirely. 1 day passed, then 2. On the 3rd day, he showed up unannounced. Leaning casually against her desk like he had all the time in the world, Jason grinned. "I hear you got some good news." Claire smiled, hopeful. "Yes, I really appreciate it. That project meant a lot." He nodded. "Right. That's why I wanted to talk to you about the tickets?" Something in his voice made her stomach twist. He continued, calm as ever. "Clients don't always understand corporate hierarchy. Technically, that gift was meant for the firm, not just for you." She blinked. "The email said they were a personal thank you?" Jason waved a hand. "Be that as it may, I'm taking the tickets. I've already made arrangements." Claire sat frozen. He finished with a smile. "You should be grateful you have a job. That's the real reward." Her heart pounded. This wasn't about football anymore. It was about respect. And in that moment, Claire knew Monday would bring more than just a regular workday. It would bring the beginning of something else. He took my reward, so I let him destroy himself. The moment Jason walked out of her office, Claire's smile dropped. Not the fake one she'd mastered over the years, the tight-lipped grin that masked 100 disappointments. No, that one slipped away the second his polished loafers disappeared down the hallway. What remained was silence, fury, and an idea. She stared at her computer screen, the Super Bowl email still open, the subject line, "Thank you, enjoy the game." Her name typed with intention, her reward clear as daylight. There was no ambiguity. The client hadn't sent those tickets to the firm. He sent them to her. Jason wasn't just stealing a pair of football tickets. He was stealing recognition, integrity, the value of months of work. But Claire wasn't the kind of woman who flipped a desk or started a shouting match in the break room. She wasn't raised that way. Her father, a retired Air Force mechanic, always said, "Don't fight fire with fire. Fight fire with facts." And that's exactly what she intended to do. She picked up her phone, thumbs steady, and texted the client. Casual, polite. "Hey, just wanted to thank you again for thinking of me with the Super Bowl tickets. Unfortunately, I didn't end up receiving them. Not sure what happened, but I really appreciated the gesture regardless. Hope to catch up soon." Less than 60 seconds later, her phone buzzed. "Are you kidding me? Who took them?" Her lips curled. "Not sure, honestly. I just never got them." No big deal, though. There was a pause. Then came the reply. "It is a big deal. Those were for you. Let me handle this. Say nothing for now." Oh, she could say nothing. Saying nothing had always been her superpower. Claire leaned back in her chair, a slow breath escaping her lungs. This was no longer between her and Jason. It was now between Jason and the one person he couldn't charm, intimidate, or outmaneuver, the client. The rest of the week played out like a slow-building storm. She listened. She waited. And, most importantly, she watched. Friday at lunch, Claire overheard Jason in the break room, voice loud enough to catch half the office's attention. "Yeah, 40-yard line, unreal seats. I'm taking a potential investor, big fish. These deals are about relationships, you know." He chuckled, the sound echoing off the tile floor. Claire stood quietly around the corner, coffee mug in hand. She didn't need to record him. She didn't need to write anything down. His ego was doing all the work for her. By 2 p.m., Jason had left early, strutting through the lobby like he owned the place. He carried a Louis Vuitton weekend bag and a sense of invincibility that dripped off him like expensive cologne. Claire watched him go with the same look she gave losing teams on Sunday nights. Disappointed, but not surprised. Saturday came and went. Sunday, too. She didn't watch the Super Bowl. Couldn't. Not because it hurt too much, but because Monday was the real event. The meeting invite landed in her inbox at 9:30 a.m. sharp. Subject, client review, mandatory attendance location, conference room. A attendees, senior partners, Jason Whitmore, client representative, Claire. She clicked accept and smoothed her blazer. When she walked into the glass-walled room 10 minutes later, the air was different, heavier. Jason was already seated at the head of the table, sipping coffee like he had just returned from a victory parade. But when the client walked in, followed by a woman introduced as Michelle Reyes, Vice President of Corporate Partnerships, the smile slid off his face. What happened next would become office legend, the kind of story whispered in break rooms and recounted at networking events for years. Because Jason didn't just get exposed, he got dismantled. And Claire? She didn't say much, just enough to confirm the facts. She didn't gloat. She didn't interrupt. She let the truth speak for itself. By the end of the meeting, one thing was clear. Jason had stolen the wrong reward from the wrong person. And Claire had just played the smartest move of her life. Monday was just the beginning. The room had fallen deathly quiet. You could hear the tick of the wall clock and the rustle of paper as Michelle, the VP of Corporate Partnerships, folded her hands over her notepad. She didn't need to raise her voice. Her authority was like gravity, calm, constant, undeniable. "Jason," she said, eyes sharp as glass, Are you telling us you knowingly redirected tickets gifted to an individual employee by a client, then used company funds to attend the Super Bowl for personal benefit? Jason sputtered. I was cultivating an investor relationship. The client cut in, cool and steady. You took your brother-in-law. And just like that, the air was sucked out of the room. Claire didn't flinch. She didn't need to. Her silence was louder than any argument. She had already won, quietly, cleanly, with every step calculated. Like her grandfather used to say when they played checkers on the back porch, "Let 'em jump your piece so you can jump 3 of theirs." Jason had jumped and fallen right into the trap. Michelle looked at him like a disappointed principal, tired of excuses. This isn't just unethical, it's grounds for termination, misappropriation of gifts, misuse of company resources, violation of client trust. Should I go on? Jason paled, his face no longer smug but slack with panic. The client nodded toward Claire. For what it's worth, she's the reason we stayed this long. She ran that account. She earned that thank you. And, frankly, I'd rather work with someone who doesn't lie for sport. Michelle took it from there. Effective immediately, you're suspended pending formal review. Jason stood up so quickly his chair skidded back against the floor. This is insane. You're making a huge mistake. But no one moved. No one defended him. No one followed him out. The glass doors whispered shut behind him. And just like that, the man who had treated Claire like she didn't matter had become a ghost. She didn't smile, at least not until she reached her desk. The promotion letter was already waiting, freshly signed, with a pay raise that made her eyes widen. But even more satisfying was the message scrawled on the sticky note attached. Let's put the right person in charge this time. Michelle. That afternoon, the office buzzed. People whispered by the water cooler. Emails pinged in quiet support. A few brave coworkers stopped by her desk with a congrats and a knowing glance. But Claire didn't linger in the moment. She had calls to make, systems to fix, a reputation to live up to. Then came the HR summons. Of course, Jason wasn't done yet. He tried to flip the narrative, paint himself as the victim, claimed Claire had violated company confidentiality by sharing internal issues with a client. It was almost pathetic. She sat across from Karen Fletcher in HR, calm as a lake. Her posture was perfect. Her tone measured. Karen Fletcher glanced at her notes. Claire, we've reviewed the situation. The client initiated the conversation. You disclosed nothing confidential, only that you didn't receive a personal gift. That doesn't violate policy. Jason's jaw clenched. And given the client's formal complaint and the investigation into your expense reports, she continued, turning to him, you're no longer employed here as of this afternoon. Boom. That was it. No courtroom drama, no big scene, just corporate justice served with a side of silence. As Claire left the HR room, she passed Jason in the hallway. He wouldn't meet her eyes. His briefcase sagged in his hand. The corner office he once ruled had already been rekeyed. She walked back to her desk, sat down, and for the first time in a long time, let herself breathe. The man who stole her recognition was gone. But the best part? Her story was just beginning. The offer that changed everything. The office was unusually quiet after Jason's dramatic exit. Oh, people were whispering in corners and glancing over computer screens, but nobody dared speak openly. After all, a senior partner being fired in front of a client and HR wasn't something that happened every day. Claire sat at her desk, her inbox overflowing with congratulations, emails, and stunned Slack messages. Some were from people she hadn't spoken to in months, others from coworkers who had silently admired her resilience from afar. But amid the buzz and backpats, one message made her heart stop. Subject: a quick conversation? It was from the client. She clicked it open. Claire, I hope you're doing well. I just wanted to say thank you for your integrity, professionalism, and the way you handled everything. It didn't go unnoticed. I'd like to talk to you about a potential opportunity. Something long term. If you're open to a quick call, let me know. Claire sat back in her chair, her mind racing. She wasn't naive. She knew this wasn't just gratitude. This was something bigger. She replied, happy to chat. I'm free this afternoon after 4 p.m. The call lasted 20 minutes. It was straightforward, respectful, and life-changing. The client, Stephen Caldwell, CEO of Rivercrest Strategies, got straight to the point. I've been watching how you work for months, he said. You're sharp, strategic, and you get things done. I didn't just lose confidence in Jason, I lost confidence in your entire firm, but not in you. Claire didn't know what to say. He continued, I want you to come work for me. Head of business strategy. I'll double your current salary, give you the autonomy you deserve, and you'll have a seat at the leadership table. Double. She nearly dropped her phone. When she finally found her voice, it was steady. I'm honored, but I just got promoted here. Officially. Stephen chuckled. You got promoted because you forced their hand, not because they recognized your value. The words hit hard because they were true. He continued, look, I know this is a big decision, but I've built my company around people like you, folks who've been overlooked, undervalued, underestimated. You've already proven what you can do with half the support. Imagine what you could do with all of it. She didn't give him an answer that day. Instead, she took a walk, just around the block. The sky was clear, the Texas sun dipping low as it always did in late winter, casting long golden rays over the buildings. She thought about the late nights, the sacrifices, the countless times she bit her tongue when others took credit. And then she thought about how quickly her firm had tried to turn on her when Jason failed. Not even 48 hours after her promotion, did she really owe them her loyalty? Number, they had broken that contract long ago. By the next morning, her resignation letter was printed, signed, and placed on Karen Fletcher's desk in HR. You're leaving? Karen Fletcher blinked, surprised. Claire smiled. I got an offer I couldn't refuse. She packed her things quietly. No drama, no big speech. Just a woman who had finally stepped into her worth and wasn't going to shrink again. As she rolled her suitcase toward the elevator, a few coworkers applauded quietly. A few whispered, "You go, girl," under their breath. And when the elevator doors closed, she let herself grin, because this wasn't just a new job, it was a new life. The sweetest victory. 1 year later, it had been a year since Claire walked out of her old office for the last time. Now she stood in a corner office 20 floors above downtown Dallas, a wall of glass behind her framing the skyline. Her name, Claire Morgan, VP of Strategic Development, was etched in gold on the frosted door. No one had handed her this title in a panic. No scandal had forced it. She earned it, every inch of it. The leather chair beneath her creaked slightly as she leaned back and glanced at the framed letter on her shelf. A personal thank you from Stephen Caldwell, CEO of Rivercrest Strategies, the very client who'd once watched her be overlooked. Now, he was one of her biggest advocates. It was poetic. Claire's days looked different now. She still worked hard, but her mornings started on her terms, with a real breakfast, not a protein bar wolfed down in traffic. She walked her golden retriever, Brewster, around the block before heading into the office by 8:30 a.m., hot coffee in hand, not stress. The culture she helped shape at Rowan and Blake, yes, the company had rebranded and her name was now on the masthead, was everything she'd once longed for. Transparent, empowering, driven, but deeply human. No more invisible sacrifices. No more paying your dues while someone else took the credit. At Rowan and Blake, people were rewarded for their ideas, not their office politics. And Claire had become the mentor she never had. Every Friday at 2 p.m., she hosted open office hours, just like she promised herself she would. Interns, project managers, even senior staff came by to ask, to learn, or just to be heard. She remembered every name, every story, because that's what real leadership looked like. Not title waving or corner office power plays, just listening, just caring. She'd even taken a trip to Napa Valley with her sister in September, a dream they'd talked about for 15 years but never acted on. They visited 3 vineyards, bought a ridiculous amount of wine, and stayed at a little bed and breakfast that served the fluffiest buttermilk pancakes she'd ever had. One afternoon, while sipping from a mug that read "Still Making Moves," Claire got an alert on her phone, an industry newsletter headline. Former executive Jason Whitmore sues former firm for wrongful termination. She nearly laughed out loud. He was still fighting battles he'd already lost. She clicked on the article, browsed through the corporate jargon, and found the quote that sealed it. Sources inside the firm say Fowler's reputation never recovered after losing Rivercrest Strategies. The firm has struggled to retain key accounts since his departure. Claire didn't gloat. She didn't need to. Her success said everything. She closed the tab and opened her calendar. A meeting with Rivercrest's expansion team was in 30 minutes, then a check-in with a junior strategist who'd just pitched her first big idea. Life wasn't perfect, but it was full, authentic, and hers. As the sun set, casting golden light across her desk, Claire thought back to the moment in her old office, when Jason smirked and said, "You should be grateful you have a job." She smiled now, the kind of smile that comes from knowing you bet on yourself. And won. Because gratitude isn't owed to those who underestimate you. It belongs to the life you build when you finally walk away. And Claire? She wasn't surviving anymore. She was thriving. Legacy in motion. The leader. Claire became. It was a quiet Thursday evening when Claire passed the bulletin board in the hallway, the same one her team used to pin thank you notes, success stories, and little celebrations. A new note had been tacked up, written in neat blue ink on company letterhead. To Claire, for showing us what strength looks like when no one's watching. You didn't just change a team, you changed the way we work and the way we believe in ourselves. She stood still for a moment, reading it once, then again. Her chest tightened, not with pride, but with something deeper. Gratitude. Not the kind Jason once said she should feel for simply having a job, but the kind you earn from building something real, from becoming the leader you always wished you had. At 46, Claire had finally arrived at a chapter in her life she hadn't dared to imagine a decade ago. She wasn't just running strategy for Rowan and Blake. She was helping steer the company's national expansion, one office already thriving in Denver, another set to open in Raleigh by spring. The operations processes she'd helped design were now a model being taught in onboarding programs. Client retention had never been higher. Her fingerprints were everywhere. But perhaps her proudest legacy was not on paper. It lived in the culture she cultivated. You could feel it in the energy of the break room, where laughter and collaboration weren't just perks, they were expected. You could see it in the confident posture of young women who once kept their voices small in meetings, now leading project calls and negotiating contracts. And you could hear it every Friday, when a line of fresh faces formed outside Claire's door during her open office hours. They came not just for advice, but for the kind of mentorship you rarely found anymore, the kind grounded in empathy, patience, and truth. Claire never sugarcoated anything, but she always made people feel seen. One afternoon, a young analyst named Lily Parker lingered after the others had left. She looked nervous, clutching a notebook. I just wanted to say thank you, she said, barely above a whisper. You probably don't remember, but a few months ago, I was ready to quit. I didn't think I belonged here. You talked me out of it. You told me I didn't need to ask for permission to be confident. Claire smiled. I remember. Lily Parker nodded. Next week, I'm leading my first full client pitch, and I just wanted you to know I'm not scared anymore. Claire's eyes softened. She reached out, squeezed Lily Parker's hand. You never needed to be. That was the legacy she was building. Quiet, steady, and unforgettable. Outside of work, life had also begun to bloom in ways Claire hadn't expected. She finally booked that trip to the Oregon wine country with her best friend. They toured vineyards, hiked in the fresh pine air, and laughed like college girls. She'd taken up painting again, too, something she hadn't done since her 20s. Her garage now doubled as an art studio, and every Saturday morning, she spent 2 hours lost in color and silence, no deadlines chasing her down. She still got the occasional LinkedIn request from old colleagues, some congratulatory, others curious, a few even apologetic. One message from a former intern said simply, I stayed because of you. I believed in myself because you did first. That one she printed and framed. Claire never looked back with bitterness. The struggle had shaped her, but she had no interest in reliving it. Now she was focused on the future, hers and everyone she led, because in the end, true revenge wasn't about payback. It was about building the kind of life no one could take from you. And Claire had done just that, one bold, quiet choice at a time. Beyond the office, Claire's new mission. 6 months after her promotion to the executive steering committee at Rowan and Blake, Claire found herself standing behind a podium at a national leadership summit in Phoenix, Arizona. The room was filled with over 500 professionals, executives, team leaders, HR directors, all waiting to hear her speak. The backdrop behind her read, Reshaping Work Culture, Leadership That Listens. She adjusted the mic, glanced at her notes, then looked out into the crowd. When I started in this industry, she began, I thought the only way to move forward was to keep my head down and work harder than everyone else. That if I proved myself enough times, someone would eventually notice. The room quieted. But I was wrong. Recognition doesn't come from sacrifice. It comes from being in the right room, with the right people, at the right time. And if those 3 things never align, you make your own room. Laughter rippled gently through the crowd. Claire wasn't trying to be profound. She was just telling the truth. And that's what made her voice so powerful. After the talk, people lined up to shake her hand. A woman in her early 50s leaned in, eyes misty. I've worked in HR for 20 years, she said, and I've never heard someone explain burnout, ambition, and dignity the way you just did. Thank you. Claire smiled. It's time we stop treating those things like opposites. It wasn't just speaking engagements either. Claire had recently started writing a monthly column for Forbes Women called The Second Act, a space dedicated to mid-career professionals reclaiming their worth after years of being overlooked. Her pieces covered everything from negotiating a raise in your 40s to navigating ageism in tech to recognizing the red flags of a toxic boss before you waste 5 years hoping they'll change. The response was overwhelming. Thousands of readers messaged her, some sharing stories eerily similar to her own. Others simply said, "You gave me the courage to leave." Back at the office, Claire wasn't just a leader, she was a culture setter. Under her guidance, Rowan and Blake launched a new initiative called Career Comeback, a hiring and mentorship program for professionals over 40 re-entering the workforce after layoffs, caregiving duties, or career pivots. Claire had advocated fiercely for it, insisting that Experience isn't a liability, it's our greatest untapped asset. And it worked. The first quarter of the program saw retention rates spike by 23%, and team satisfaction surveys reported a 40% increase in cross-generational collaboration. Claire knew the data mattered, but what really struck her was the story behind the numbers. Like Donna Brooks, a 52-year-old former school administrator who thought no one would hire her after she left to care for her aging parents. Now, she was managing a client services team, and last month, her group closed a $2.1 million deal. Or Marcus, a single dad in his late 40s who had been passed over 6 times at his old firm. Claire had met him during a workshop and quietly pushed his name up the ladder. Today, he was leading Rowan and Blake's sustainability strategy division. Every Friday, when Claire walked through the office with her coffee and nodded to her team, she didn't see employees. She saw a movement, because she knew the real legacy wasn't just about what you built, it was about who you empowered along the way. And if anyone asked her what she was most proud of, she wouldn't mention her title. She wouldn't talk about the corner office or the client wins. She'd just say, "I made space for others to rise." And that, more than any paycheck or promotion, was her greatest triumph. When one woman rises, she lifts others. By the time Claire reached her 1-year anniversary at Rowan and Blake, her story had already become something of a legend, not just within the company, but across the industry. It wasn't just about how she stood up to a toxic boss. It was about what she built afterward. The ripple effect was undeniable. What started as a quiet act of rebellion turned into a rallying cry for professionals across the country, especially those in their 40s and 50s who were tired of being overlooked in favor of shiny and new. Claire had unintentionally become a symbol, not just of strength, but of reinvention. One morning, she received an invitation that stopped her in her tracks. It was from the Harvard Business Review. They wanted to feature her in an upcoming article titled "The Rise of the Midlife Leader." The editor called Claire's story a masterclass in resilience and wanted to explore how her leadership philosophy had helped not only revitalize her firm, but also transform how it approached hiring, retention, and workplace dignity. Claire didn't hesitate. She flew to Boston that fall and sat for the interview, wearing the same navy blue blazer she once wore on her final day at her old firm. Only now, it didn't carry the weight of disappointment. It carried power, legacy, proof that you could rebuild better, smarter, stronger. "I didn't burn the bridge behind me," she told the interviewer. "I just chose to build a better one in the opposite direction." The article went viral. By the end of the week, her LinkedIn inbox had over 600 messages. Some were from recruiters, others from women who said things like, "Your story gave me the strength to finally walk out of a job that was killing my spirit." Claire started hosting monthly webinars titled "Rise Again: Second Act Strategies for Midlife Professionals." She didn't charge a dime. It wasn't about the money. It was about the mission. And every time she logged in, she saw names from all over the country: Dallas, Chicago, Minneapolis, Atlanta, people hungry for a new narrative, one where age wasn't a liability, one where wisdom was currency. Back at Rowan and Blake, her influence had become institutional. New company policies now included age-inclusive leadership training, mentorship credits for veteran employees, and quarterly Silent Star Awards, recognizing behind-the-scenes contributors who often made the biggest difference without ever asking for the spotlight. And Claire? She never once asked for credit. She didn't need it, because every time she walked through the halls and saw someone older than 45 getting the respect they deserved, she smiled. She had turned her pain into purpose. She had turned her story into strategy. And most importantly, she had turned a quiet resignation email into a movement that reminded an entire generation, "You're not past your prime. You're just getting started." Life lesson. Know your worth and don't wait for permission to be respected. Claire's journey is a powerful reminder that hard work alone isn't always enough, and that loyalty to the wrong people can quietly cost us years. Like many professionals in their 40s and 50s, she poured herself into a job that took her for granted, believing recognition would naturally follow sacrifice. But when her integrity was tested and her reward was stolen, Claire chose something greater than revenge. She chose self-worth. She let the truth do the talking, trusted her instincts, and bet on herself. The result? Not just a promotion, but a transformation. This story speaks to anyone who's ever been overlooked, undervalued, or underestimated. You don't have to shout to make an impact, but you do have to stand up when the line is crossed. Claire teaches us that dignity and courage often come quietly, but their effects echo far. For those navigating career crossroads in midlife, her story is a rallying cry. Don't shrink to fit where you no longer belong. Walk away, rebuild, and thrive. Because the respect you've been waiting for isn't found in the next meeting or title. It begins the moment you decide you're worth more.